I canceled my wedding at the last minute after learning the truth. My fiancé lied about wanting a child-free ceremony, but it was just an excuse to exclude my 15-year-old daughter. Meanwhile, she planned to include all 3 of her own kids. So I called it off and walked away without regret. I thought I had found the woman I was going to spend the rest of my life with. We'd been together for 4 years, engaged for 7 months, and I genuinely believed I knew her inside and out. But then, just days before our wedding, a discovery shattered everything, revealing a shocking betrayal that cut deeper than I could have imagined. It involved my 15-year-old daughter. The whole nightmare started months ago during wedding planning. She was adamant. A child-free wedding, no exceptions, no one under 18. It immediately struck me as odd, especially since she has 3 kids of her own, ages 8, 10, and 13, and is super close to her 8 nieces and nephews, all under 16, who she sees constantly. I mean, my daughter lives with me half the time. She's here every other weekend, every school holiday. When I asked her about excluding all children, including mine, she said she wanted an adult-focused day, free from distractions, noise, crying, or kids running around. She'd apparently been to weddings where children caused disruptions, and she just wanted our special day to be peaceful, where adults could let loose without supervising kids. I fought her on this for weeks. My daughter and I are incredibly close. She's been through so much with me since her mom and I split when she was 3. She's always been my rock, supportive of my relationships, even when things got messy. Her mom's happily remarried to a great guy who treats my daughter wonderfully. So there's never been any issue with me dating or the idea of me remarrying. My daughter is incredibly mature. She's always told me she just wants me to be happy, to find someone who makes me laugh and treats me well. She was genuinely excited about having a stepmom and potential step-siblings. After endless discussions and arguments, I finally caved, but only because my daughter told me it was okay. She said she wouldn't be mad about missing the wedding if we got ice cream afterward, and had a special father-daughter dinner the following weekend. She understood some people wanted fancy weddings without kids, and didn't want to cause problems, especially seeing how much the wedding planning meant to my fiancé. She even suggested staying with her mom that weekend and watching the video later if we had it professionally recorded. She even proposed a small family dinner after the wedding where she could wear a nice dress, and we could take pictures as a new family. I truly believe the child-free rule applied to everyone, including my fiancé's kids and her nieces and nephews. It still stung about my daughter, but I thought it was fair. My fiancé seemed so relieved when I finally agreed. She immediately started arranging childcare for her kids, saying her ex-husband would take them for an extended weekend, and her sisters would do the same for their children. It all seemed above board. Then a few days ago, everything changed. I accidentally grabbed our shared laptop for work instead of my own. During my lunch break, I opened it to check Facebook, and it was still logged into her account. And there it was, a message notification from her sister, asking for approval of her daughter's wedding outfits and what time the children should arrive for photos before the ceremony, and if they should bring the special shoes for walking down the aisle. My heart dropped. I immediately took a screenshot. A few minutes later, after I finished my work tasks, the message was gone. Deleted. She must have seen it on her phone and wiped it, but it was too late. I had the proof. The rest of the workday was a blur. My mind raced. That evening, I asked my daughter very casually if anything had changed with my fiancé. What she told me chilled me to the bone. My daughter said my fiancé's attitude toward her had completely shifted after our engagement party. She was sweet and friendly when I was around, but the moment I was out of the room or busy with work, she'd ignore her or treat her coldly. My daughter tried to talk to her about school, friends, hobbies, normal teenage stuff, but my fiancé would give short answers or just walk away. Before we got engaged, she'd ask about her classes, her activities. After the engagement party, nothing. Zero interest. My daughter also mentioned my fiancé started making comments about how much time and attention I gave her, especially with driving her around, homework, or special outings. She'd make subtle remarks about teenagers needing to be more independent, suggesting my daughter spend more time with friends or her mother. My daughter hadn't told me because she saw how happy I was. She didn't want to ruin it, thinking maybe things would get better after the wedding, once we were all living together. She's so mature, so thoughtful of others. She didn't want to create drama or make me choose, especially since she knew how much I loved my fiancé. She just hoped it was temporary stress from wedding planning. The morning of the wedding. It was 9 a.m., 3 hours before the ceremony. I walked into the main reception area, and there they were. All of my fiancée's children and her nieces and nephews. Dressed in formal outfits, taking pictures with the wedding photographer. Laughing, running around completely comfortable. Like they'd been there for rehearsals I knew nothing about. They were wearing matching outfits, coordinated with our wedding colors, and the girl's hair was professionally done. This was planned. Weeks, maybe months in advance. Not a last-minute decision. I saw red. I walked straight up to my fiancée, who was talking to her sister near the altar. I showed her the screenshot. Her face went stark white. She started looking around frantically, trying to see if anyone else had noticed. She stammered, making excuses, claiming her sister had convinced her at the last minute that weddings were better with family, and she was going to surprise me. She was going to tell me when I arrived. I would be happy to see them. I cut her off. I know you're lying. I told her, my voice low but seething. That message was from days ago, not this morning. You deleted it from the laptop. I pointed to the kids in their special outfits, the designated seats, the programs with their names. This was planned for weeks, for months. I can't marry someone who would lie to me about my daughter, I said, my voice cracking with disbelief and rage. Someone who would treat my child differently than her own, for no good reason. It was over. Right then, right there. I turned and walked out of the venue. The guests were starting to arrive, taking their seats. Over 100 people, my family, friends, college classmates, all there. I didn't explain. I just left. It was probably confusing, embarrassing for everyone. But I couldn't stand there and pretend everything was fine. Not when I just discovered this level of deceit, this deliberate exclusion of my daughter from what was supposed to be one of the most important days of my life. I drove straight home. The rest of the day was a blur of phone calls from confused family and friends. Was it canceled? Postponed? An emergency? I told them. Canceled. Permanently. I said I'd explain later, when I had time to process. Some might say I was wrong for leaving without an explanation, for leaving her on our wedding day. But I had to. Some people questioned if my daughter was being entirely truthful about my fiancé's behavior. Let me be clear. My daughter's mother and I were never married. We broke up when our daughter was 3. She barely remembers us as a couple. Her mom's happily remarried to a wonderful man who's never shown an ounce of jealousy about my relationship with our daughter. My daughter has never had issues with me dating. In fact, she's encouraged me to find someone to be happy. She's not the type to lie, especially about something serious like mistreatment. She knows how much I value honesty. She's never tried to sabotage my relationships or create drama. It's been 3 days since I called off the wedding. The minute I got home from the venue, I told my now ex-fiancée she needed to pack her things and move out. She'd been living with me for about a year and a half. I couldn't live with someone who'd lied about something so fundamental to our relationship, to our future as a blended family. She didn't have anywhere to go on such short notice, having given up her apartment, so I gave her 48 hours to arrange staying with her sister or parents, both of whom live in the same city. She cried, she begged me to reconsider, saying we could work through it, that she'd do anything to fix it. I told her lying about my daughter was unforgivable. I needed her to leave so I could focus on repairing the damage to my relationship with my child. She reluctantly called her sister and spent the rest of Saturday and most of Sunday packing essentials. My friends have been incredibly supportive. They said they noticed something was off during our engagement, how my fiancé seemed annoyed or impatient around my daughter. They saw her trying to monopolize my attention at gatherings. They'd even been planning to talk to me about their concerns, but they didn't want to interfere unless I asked or things became obviously problematic. They noticed my fiancé often suggested activities that specifically excluded children, and she'd schedule important conversations or romantic moments when my daughter was supposed to be spending time with me. I've also blocked my ex-fiancé's parents and both her sisters on my phone and social media. They were clearly complicit. They had to have known she was planning to exclude only my daughter while including their own kids. These were people I thought I had a good relationship with, people I looked forward to having as extended family, who would bring more love into my daughter's life. I gave my ex-fiancé an ultimatum. Explain her behavior, her reasons for lying. via text if she wanted, but no in-person meetings, no phone calls. I was too angry, too hurt, to trust myself to remain calm face to face. If she didn't want to explain, that was fine too. We just move on. She hasn't responded yet, which is unusual for her. She works from home, constantly on her phone. It's been another 3 days, so 6 days total since I canceled the wedding. My ex-fiancée finally responded to my ultimatum. She sent several long text messages, insisting she needed to meet in person to explain her valid reasons. She didn't want to be perceived as the bad guy without her side of the story. Text messages couldn't convey the full context or emotional complexity. She said I owed it to our 4-year relationship to hear her out face to face. She was worried I'd misunderstand her motivations. I refused. Again, text message or nothing. I didn't trust her enough to be alone with her. I wasn't interested in being manipulated by tears or emotional appeals. I wanted an explanation I could read carefully, think about, without pressure to respond immediately. I gave her 24 hours to send a written explanation covering all her reasoning and motivations, or I'd block her forever. I needed to protect myself and my daughter from any more emotional manipulation. This was her one chance for an honest account. She finally sent a long explanation the next day. Her reasoning? Something I never could have predicted. It revealed a level of irrationality and poor judgment that made me realize I never truly knew her. She said that at our engagement party, my daughter felt unwell and went to her room to rest. My ex-fiancé went upstairs to check on her, and she heard my daughter talking and laughing on the phone with a friend. This made my ex-fiancé believe my daughter was faking her illness to get attention and pull me away from our celebration. She thought my daughter was being manipulative, trying to disrupt our special evening. Instead of talking to me or even my daughter, she discussed it with her sisters. And her sisters apparently stirred the pot, convincing her that my daughter was unhappy about our upcoming marriage and would cause problems. They shared stories about other blended families where kids caused issues, telling her she needed to establish clear boundaries before we got married, or my daughter would never respect her as a stepmother. They told her my daughter was probably hoping our relationship would fail so she could have all my attention. They said she was likely pretending to be supportive while secretly working against us. This single incident at our engagement party, just hearing my sick daughter talk on the phone, led to my ex-fiancé pushing her away and treating her coldly for 7 months. She thought if she made it clear my daughter wasn't welcome, my daughter would eventually choose to spend more time at her mother's. She actually hoped our marriage would be easier without the complications of stepchildren. My ex-fiancé even admitted she hoped the child-free wedding would send a clear message to my daughter about her place. And she planned to include her own children and nieces and nephews to show there were different rules for different people in our family hierarchy. She thought this would establish her authority, making it clear her children would always take priority. I talked to my daughter about this. She confirmed she was on the phone, but she was genuinely unwell with a headache and stomach problems. She didn't understand why being sick meant she couldn't talk on the phone, especially since it was making her feel a little better. She was excited about the engagement party and wanted to stay, but she felt worse and went to rest so she wouldn't get sicker. She called her friend to tell her about the party, talking about normal teenage things, not trying to get attention or disrupt anything. She was baffled by the idea that talking on the phone while sick was manipulation. She'd never interfered with my relationships. She'd always been genuinely supportive of my happiness. That's when it hit me. My ex-fiancé had never truly accepted my daughter as part of our family. She was planning to slowly phase her out of my life after we were married, so she could have all my attention and resources focused on her and her own kids. The child-free wedding was just the beginning. It would have been years of my daughter being excluded from important family events. I'm so grateful I discovered her true intentions before we actually got married, before any more damage was done to my daughter. It's been 8 days now since I canceled the wedding. My ex-fiancé showed up at my door unannounced yesterday evening to collect more of her things. I had told her to coordinate with me, to come when I was out and my daughter wasn't home, to avoid any awkwardness. I even offered to have a friend present, but she just showed up around 7 p.m. with her sister and brother-in-law. When I opened the door, she immediately started apologizing, trying to talk about us. She admitted her behavior toward my daughter was immature and wrong, and that she was too influenced by her sister's advice. She'd had a big fight with her sisters, realizing their advice had ruined everything. Staying at her sister's house had become tense because of their arguments. Her sisters were now claiming they were only trying to help, not trying to cause permanent damage. They were blaming her for misinterpreting their suggestions, for taking their advice too far. And she was angry at them for encouraging her to treat my daughter poorly, and for convincing her that excluding my daughter was a reasonable solution. She begged for a second chance, promised to make things work with both me and my daughter. She'd come home, fix the damage. She understood my daughter was the most important person. She'd go to family counseling, therapy, anything to be a better stepmother and partner. She promised to apologize to my daughter sincerely, never exclude her again, and work hard to rebuild trust. She was willing to start over, to prove she could be the stepmother my daughter deserved. I told her clearly that nothing was more important than my daughter. I owed it to her to do what was right, and that meant not letting someone back into our lives who had deliberately tried to hurt her, to push her away for months without any valid reason. Trust, once broken so completely, couldn't be rebuilt. I couldn't risk putting my daughter through any more emotional manipulation or rejection from someone who was supposed to be family. The fact that she could lie to me for months and mistreat my daughter showed me she didn't have the character or values I needed in a partner. I couldn't trust her to treat my daughter fairly in the future, even if she promised to change. My daughter's emotional security and well-being were my top priority. I wasn't gambling with her happiness. I told her to collect her things quickly. Then I went upstairs. I stayed in my bedroom, listening to her cry while she and her family loaded her belongings into their truck. I didn't come down until I heard them leave. My daughter was at her mother's that night, thankfully. I called her later to let her know that my ex-fiancé had come, and that this chapter was completely closed. We could move forward. The one positive outcome from all this? My relationship with my daughter is back to how it was before. She's sharing everything with me again. No secrets, no hesitation. She's telling me about friends, school, summer plans. She's more relaxed, more comfortable now that my ex-fiancé isn't in our house, creating tension. She's more talkative in the car, and she's inviting friends over again. Something she stopped doing during the engagement because she was worried about my ex-fiancé's reaction to teenagers making noise. We're even planning a getaway vacation with some friends who have kids her age. I need a break after these emotionally draining weeks. My daughter is excited to have our home back to its normal, peaceful atmosphere. I'm disappointed I wasted 4 years with someone who turned out to have such different values when it comes to family and honesty. But I am truly grateful I discovered her true character before we got married, before she could do any more damage to my daughter's sense of security and belonging in her own home.